This Halloween I wanted to be a moth, so I created a moth cape out of pretty minimal materials and low budget. I started my research online, as we all do, and I found some more or less interesting options out there, but for the most part I landed on something like this. It was like a cape type situation. And I also went to Pinterest to get some more inspiration, and I found something like this that was interesting. It was a collar made out of fur, and I happen to have this fur material that came off of a coat hood that I never wear because it's really hot in South Carolina. But speaking of South Carolina, I wanted to do a local moth, so I found this Cropoia moth to base my artwork after, and like I said, the main material of this is going to be an old sheet. Luckily, I have questionably stained sheets in my repertoire, as well as spray paint, black spray paint, and to paint, I use this liquid watercolor, which I can explain some other options if you don't have that, but that's what I use to create this. But to get started, I laid out my sheet, tried to decide how large I wanted it to be, realized it was easier just to do it while standing up, and I marked out where I wanted to cut because I didn't want it super long. I'm quite short, so I marked off 2 areas and then started cutting. If you were wanting to make this, this would be your height and this would be your arm wingspan. Then I tried on my new wings, which I really liked the length and the width, so I figured it was time to go to the next step. Since moths are symmetrical, I folded it in half and winged it on what kind of shape I wanted, but I cut those out, added some details, and I had wings. I decided to make some templates for my spray paint, which I highly recommend. It allows you to block off spots and lines and those kind of things. So I created 3 main templates. It was the bean type shape you just saw me draw, and then this shape. For creating these templates, I used a thick cardstock, but you could use cardboard or paper, whatever you have, as long as it can block off certain areas. And here's a little spray paint montage. This technique was kind of interesting. I folded and wrinkled the sheet to be able to make some veins so that it looked a little more natural, and I spray painted those so it would capture on the high points. This is where I used my liquid watercolor and I put it into a separate bottle, but if you were to do this and you don't have liquid watercolor, I don't think you need to buy it. You could use dye, you could use watered down acrylic, whatever you have. I was able to get the majority of the color on there, and then I went in with a brush to be able to get the details and the dots, the lines, that kind of stuff. So, I believe that we are probably about halfway through this project. I'm pretty happy where I'm standing right now, which is I have wings. That's it. But that's pretty much the whole project. The next 3 things I would have to do or want to do
would be add the collar that I showed you earlier. The second thing would be I want to figure out how to do the edges, because right now it's like a mixed match. It's an old sheet, so I left some of the edges. So I've got some of those. I've got some raw sides. I think I might go with the raw edges, because I think that's kind of pretty. It looks like a moth. But we'll see as we go. And that would mean I wouldn't have to break out the sewing machine, so we'll see. And then the third thing would be optional wrist holders, but I don't know, it just seems like more work and it's not really necessary. I want to keep this as simple as possible because I think this could be a really cool first project for somebody. But yeah, I think I'm pretty happy at the moment. I love that it's two-sided. Pretty happy that I had to do half the amount of work to get this. And the ones on Amazon don't have that double-sidedness. Yeah, I like that it looks like batik as well. If you don't know what that is, it's like wax fabric art. It wasn't intentional, but it's cool.
And then I very haphazardly sewed on the collar, which Bruno really helped with this a lot. But I took a needle and thread and sewed that along the top edge. And again, you don't need this detail, but I think it looks very nice on the final product. Just gives it a little more finished edge. Speaking of edges, I absolutely destroy the edges using what I have of nails to rip up the edges, and here's some ASMR of me doing that. And then I went in my stash just to find a ribbon. I ended up going with this black ribbon that worked pretty perfectly, but I used that on both sides by cutting off the edges to finish them off and then cutting it in half and sewing to the edge of the fur collar. But once I had finished with that, it was ready for the reveal. So it is complete. I'm pretty darn happy with this project and how it turned out. I think that if I were to do it again, which I would do a Luna Moth, which I would have to find a better way to do the edges rather than just ripping them up. But yeah, at the very end I did add some LEDs in there. The battery pack is in here, and I just am able to turn them on and off real easily. It's pretty cool for nighttime events and stuff, but I really hate wearing costumes, so this is like my best costume. I throw it on and I'm something. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and hope you did too.